Good morning. Here's your coronavirus update from Coronavirus Central on March 20th, year 2020. I've got a lot of new stuff that I want to present. I'm still keeping track of the same as before. For instance, we're looking at the prevalence, so that's the number of existing cases divided by the population times 100,000 to give it context. Italy has basically 55 people per every 100,000 who are active cases right now. Now, it's important that this depends on testing, right? So the more people tested, the better we are at making these calculations. Luxembourg follows it, Switzerland. So you can see that there are plenty of nations with prevalence estimates above 10 per 100,000. And here in the United States, we're at 4.22 per 100,000. Change from yesterday, we've increased by 1.5 person per 100,000. Biggest increase seems to be in Luxembourg, which has over 21 people per 100,000. Italy by 7, Switzerland by about 12.5. In terms of case fatality, a case fatality is a person who is diagnosed with the disease and then dies. So the numerator would be the number of deaths, denominator would be the number of cases. And it's 8.3. So basically this is the chance of dying if you have this disease. So it's 8.3% in Italy, followed by 4.6% in Spain. Actually 6.97% in Iran. In the United States right now, it's about 1% chance, a little bit more, almost 1.5% chance. I don't see anything else here. Okay, now let's look at this by state. To me, the most intriguing comparisons are New York and Washington because those have the highest prevalences right now. New York, we're at 29 per 100,000, and in Washington State, we're about 17 per 100,000. Still, the vast majority of deaths have occurred in Washington State, so there's a 5.4% chance of dying if you're in Washington State and you've contracted this disease. Now that you must take into account that most of the deaths occurred in a nursing home where there was an outbreak. But the change from yesterday, it's an increase in terms of odds. In terms of prevalence, it's 17 per 100,000 in Washington, about 10 per 100,000 in New York. Clearly, there's a lot of stuff going on here. At this moment, though, let me go to the figures first, and I'll come back to the odds ratio here. So I do the odds ratio for you as well. So I've made several figures. I've been just presenting the rise in the prevalence in the United States over these past few days. Again, this is people per 100,000, and we can see that there's this rise that's occurring here. That looks very interesting, right, from day to day. Okay, so let's go down to comparing the United States to South Korea. And the reason I'm making this comparison between the United States and South Korea is because we learned yesterday that the first cases were diagnosed at the same time in the United States and South Korea, and people are talking about how great Korea is doing and how we should be doing more testing. They're doing so much of a better job in testing individuals than we are in the United States. Well, if you look at this prevalence per 100,000, we are on the rise, and they've been kind of steady and some declines, but there've been looks like in general there's been a decline here over time. So they're still way above us. And now one could argue that their population density is a lot higher than ours. And I'd argue, hey, that's what the United States is. We're a country that's doesn't have a very high population density. However, that doesn't mean that we should discount the fact that maybe we're doing a better job than people think. Now, I know there's this argument that we're not testing enough people, but if you watched my video yesterday, I talked about some of the pitfalls of testing, and we can't test everybody. If we're going to do that, we might as well test everybody to see who's HIV positive, to see who's carrying any other pathogen. I mean, why aren't we testing for those? So it's a lot of work, and it's not necessarily always worth it from a public health perspective because we have other diseases that we have to deal with. Again, watch my video that I posted yesterday on testing. And this is an interesting one looking at New York versus Washington State. although we have this steady increase in Washington State, look what's happened recently in New York. Again, so this outbreak seems to be localized in various states in the country, but look at that, New York, the difference over the last few days between New York. Wow, it's amazing. It's what's happening in New York versus Washington State. Okay, so that's my, and yes, I wanted to give you the odds ratio comparing New York to Washington State. I started this as looking at the odds of the odds ratio comparing Washington State to New York. Earlier, it was much larger for Washington than New York, but it's reversed, and now the odds of interacting with somebody who is positive for coronavirus is 1 minus this, so it's 43% lower in Washington State than it is in New York. So it's a big change from where we were a few days ago. All right, that's my update for today. Thank you very much, and remember, all right, thank you very much, and remember to be safe. I'll just say one thing. I was at Wegmans shopping today, and it took me like an hour and a half longer than normal because the social distancing in checking out, and the cashier is doing an amazing job cleaning after each customer. So I thank them for it. You should thank anybody who's looking out for your health like that too, and pray for them that they don't get sick. Thank you very much.